It wasn't the result that stunned the tennis world. Upsets happen all the time. It was what came after the final point that shook the sport to its very core. Imagine the scene. Court 11 at the U.S. Open, August 27th, 2025. A late summer New York afternoon, the air thick with expectation. Taylor Townsend, ranked only 139 in the world in singles but already a Grand Slam doubles champion, had just produced the performance of her life. She dismantled Jelena Ostapenko, a former French Open winner, the 25th seed, the favorite. The crowd erupted as the last ball landed out, sealing one of the great shocks of the tournament. But before the applause could even settle, the mood changed. Ostapenko walked to near the net, her face twisted with fury. The handshake, that symbolic moment of respect in tennis, never truly happened. Instead, the microphones caught it all, her voice sharp, her words venomous. "You have no class. You have no education." She didn't just say it once, she spat it out again, and again, 3 times in total, to a young black American woman who had just beaten her fair and square on one of the sport's biggest stages. The boos from the stands rolled down like thunder. Not polite disapproval, not the muttered grumbles of a shocked crowd. This was raw anger. Hundreds of fans in unison, drowning out Ostapenko's words with their disgust. Live television cameras zoomed in. Social media timelines exploded. Clips were replayed again and again, each one more damning than the last. And then there was Taylor Townsend. She stood there, absorbing the venom, processing the insult in front of the world. This was supposed to be her crowning moment, the day she silenced the doubters who said she could never cut it in singles. Instead, she found herself under attack. But Townsend did not retaliate. She didn't shout back, didn't lose her composure. Later, when the reporters pressed her, she said simply, "It's competition. People get upset when they lose. Some people say bad things." Her tone was measured, almost forgiving, but then she added something that cut deeper than any counterattack ever could. "I didn't back down. You're not going to insult me, especially after I carried myself with nothing but respect." That was the moment the contrast became crystal clear. Ostapenko, furious, reckless, throwing away her dignity in defeat. Townsend, calm, graceful, stronger than ever. The court of public opinion didn't hesitate. Within hours, the conversation shifted. This was no longer about a surprise victory. It had become something far darker, a scandal that threatened to destroy Ostapenko's career. Because these weren't just careless words in the heat of battle. They carried weight. They carried history. In a sport with a long and complicated relationship with race and respect, to call a black woman uneducated on American soil at the U.S. Open on live television was more than trash talk. It was a wound, a reminder of every slight, every stereotype, every door that had been forced open by those who came before Townsend, Althea Gibson, Arthur Ashe, the Williams sisters. The story was no longer confined to the tennis world. News outlets picked it up. Commentators debated the deeper meaning. Sponsors quietly began asking questions. A single phrase, repeated 3 times, had ignited a firestorm. And yet, this was just the beginning. Because when Ostapenko tried to explain herself, things went from bad to the worse. If you thought the insult was the peak of the drama, you'd be wrong. Because what came next revealed just how fragile Ostapenko's defense truly was, and how quickly a career can unravel when excuses turn into fire. 3 hours after the match, as clips of her meltdown went viral across TikTok, Instagram, and every sports outlet imaginable, Ostapenko finally spoke. She didn't apologize. She didn't retract her words. Instead, she doubled down. In a shaky Instagram story, she insisted that Townsend had been very disrespectful during the match. Why? Because Taylor hadn't raised her hand or said sorry after a net cord shot. That was it. That was the supposed reason behind the storm. For those outside tennis, here's the context. A net cord, and when the ball clips the tape and dribbles over for a winner, is pure luck. There's an unwritten etiquette that players acknowledge it, usually with a quick hand gesture. But it's courtesy, not law. No rule book requires it. And in the heat of a Grand Slam battle, it's often forgotten. Townsend didn't apologize. And Ostapenko chose to turn that into a full-blown attack on her opponent's class, character, and education. The explanation did not calm the waters. It poured petrol on them. Particularly the one phrase in her Instagram post. If she plays in her homeland, it doesn't mean she can behave and do whatever she wants. Homeland. That single word hit like a hammer. Critics immediately pointed out the undertones, as though Townsend's American identity excused her supposed bad manners. The implication, whether intended or not, was poisonous. By the next morning, the backlash had tripled. Naomi Osaka, never one to stay silent in the face of injustice, posted her response. Calm but devastating, she wrote, "Telling a black tennis player they have no education is one of the worst things you can say in a sport with this history." She didn't stop there. In interviews, she reminded the world that black athletes in tennis had always faced double standards. Serena branded aggressive for arguing a call. Venus told she lacked intelligence. Althea Gibson forced to justify her presence on court decades earlier. For many, Ostapenko's words weren't just an insult. They were part of a pattern. And then came the lip readers. On TikTok and Twitter, specialists broke down the footage frame by frame. What they uncovered made things worse. Ostapenko hadn't just said no education. She piled on more personal insults, digging deeper into Townsend's intelligence and class. The narrative shifted from a bad moment to a character problem. Meanwhile, Townsend's response was the opposite of fire. The very next day, she walked onto the court against a top 5 seed, Mira Andreeva, a teenage phenom destroying opponents all season, and Townsend won. Straight sets. Dominant. She wore an outfit with painted flames on the sleeves, later explaining it represented a phoenix rising from the ashes. Could symbolism be more perfect? While Ostapenko argued online, Townsend let her racket speak, turning pain into power. Sponsors began to pull back from Ostapenko. Journalists dug into her past, resurfacing clips of previous outbursts, angry rants at officials, and accusations of arrogance. Each headline grew harsher. Unsportsmanlike conduct, racism row, Ostapenko's fall from grace. The tennis world was now asking a chilling question. Could one outburst, fueled by bitterness over a net cord, truly end a career? The answer, as it turned out, was yes, because what came next was unprecedented. By the third day after the incident, the scandal had gone far beyond a tennis squabble. It was now a cultural lightning rod, debated on talk shows, dissected in opinion columns, and flooding timelines across the globe. The WTA could no longer pretend this was just another heated on-court moment. The pressure to act was suffocating. Inside the sport, the ripple effects were immediate. Sponsors quietly froze deals. Tournaments debated whether to extend her invitations. The whispers began. Was Ostapenko already toxic for the game? The narrative was no longer about her loss to Taylor Townsend. It was about whether she could even be trusted to represent professional tennis again. Meanwhile, Townsend herself was writing a new chapter in real time. After dismantling Andreeva in the next round, she reached her first ever U.S. Open 4th round. In every press conference, she was composed, thoughtful, refusing to give oxygen to the firestorm. When asked about Ostapenko's apology, a carefully worded statement where she blamed the English not being her first language, Townsend shrugged. "That's cool, that's fine, but she hasn't spoken to me directly. I'm focused on my tennis." It was the perfect dismissal. The world could see who had class and who did not. Then the bombshell dropped. The WTA disciplinary panel released its ruling, a lifetime ban for Jelena Ostapenko. The words lifetime ban had never before been applied to a former Grand Slam champion. The official statement was brutal. A pattern of discriminatory behavior, fundamentally incompatible with the values of professional tennis. The decision sent shockwaves through the sport, and with that, the floodgates opened. Rafael Nadal, a man known for avoiding controversy, broke his silence. "I have daughters. I cannot stay silent when I see behavior like this tolerated in our sport. Naomi is right. Tennis deserves better." His words carried the weight of a man who has defined respect for 2 decades. Novak Djokovic, rarely on the same page as Nadal off the court, echoed him almost word for word. "Respect is the foundation of our sport. Without it, we have nothing." Other voices followed. Venus Williams, who had lived through decades of racism in tennis, added her perspective. Consequences teach lessons. Some lessons come late, but they must still be learned. Naomi Osaka continued to lead the chorus, her viral video spreading across TikTok and Instagram with millions of views. This wasn't just inappropriate, it was racist, and the fact that the sport acted decisively. That gives me hope, but not everyone agreed. Aryna Sabalenka defended Ostapenko, calling her a nice person who sometimes loses control. That defense only fueled the divide. Osaka, in her calm, measured tone, responded, "There's a difference between having struggles and choosing to express them through discriminatory language. We all have bad days. We don't all attack someone's intelligence based on race." By now, Ostapenko was cornered. Clips of her previous outbursts resurfaced, berating ball kids, disrespecting officials, sulking in press conferences. The narrative crystallized. This wasn't a one-off mistake. This was a pattern. The ban, harsh as it had seemed, suddenly looked inevitable. Taylor Townsend, on the other hand, was thriving. Every victory felt like a vindication. Every measured word in her interviews drew admiration. She was no longer just the underdog who shocked a seed. She'd become a symbol of resilience. The phoenix in flames, rising above insult and injustice. The contrast could not have been starker. One career collapsing under the weight of arrogance, another soaring on the wings of grace. The tennis world had chosen its hero, and its villain. But what did this mean beyond the individuals? What did it reveal about the sport itself? About respect, about history, about who truly gets to belong? In sport, the scoreboard rarely tells the full story. Yes, Taylor Townsend advanced, and Jelena Ostapenko walked away disgraced, but this saga was about far more than who hit the better forehands on court 11. It was about power, respect, and the question of who gets to write the narrative in a sport long dominated by tradition and privilege. For decades, tennis has sold itself as a gentleman's game. White clothing, polite applause, etiquette as sacred as the rules themselves. But what happens when those standards are weaponized? When one player is expected to bow to the traditions, while another feels free to hurl insults that cut deeper than any racket smash? That is the heart of this story. Townsend, a black woman who has fought for every inch of her career, was told she had no education in a country where her very presence on that stage is built on generations of pioneers breaking barriers. The irony was staggering. Taylor Townsend is a college graduate, a businesswoman, a mother. She speaks multiple languages and has turned setbacks into comebacks time and again. Yet in one bitter moment, Ostapenko tried to reduce her to a stereotype as old as the sport itself, and the world didn't let it slide. That perhaps is the real lesson. In another sphere, this might have been brushed off as heat of the moment, a slap on the wrist, a fine quietly paid. But the reaction here was seismic. From Osaka's viral clarity, to Nadal's uncharacteristic outspokenness, to the flood of fans demanding accountability, the message was unmissable. Discrimination has consequences. Respect is not optional. Ostapenko's career now sits in ruins. Sponsors gone. Reputation shredded. The WTA's lifetime ban will follow her forever. A scarlet letter etched onto the story of a once promising champion. For some, the punishment felt brutal. Was it too much? Could she change? Be rehabilitated, a return? Those questions will linger, and perhaps they should. Sport is, after all, also about redemption. But redemption requires ownership, and so far, Ostapenko has shown little of it. Meanwhile, Townsend's career feels reborn. She reached her first fourth round at a Grand Slam, and she did it with the weight of an entire conversation on her shoulders. She didn't just beat an opponent, she carried herself with grace that made her more than a tennis player. She became a symbol, a phoenix, exactly as she envisioned, rising stronger from the ashes of disrespect. And beyond individuals, this scandal revealed something hopeful. The response was unified, powerful, and swift. Fans of all backgrounds stood by Townsend. Players broke their silence. Conversations about race, respect, and responsibility flooded not only tennis circles, but broader society. In the ashes of one woman's downfall, the sport glimpsed a path forward, a chance to demand better from itself. As British viewers, you know the power of sport to reflect more than just results. You've seen moments where character mattered more than the scoreline, where dignity outlasted trophies. This was one of those moments. So here's the question I'd leave you with. Was the lifetime ban justice, or was it vengeance? Should sport be ruthless in stamping out discrimination, or should there always be room for redemption? Think about it. Debate it. And while you do, don't forget, if this story gripped you, if it made you question what respect in sport really means, then hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe for more stories where victory and scandal collide. And most importantly, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because the conversation doesn't end here. It starts with you.